spooky stories. So grab your snacks, grab your cobija, and let's get straight into it. Hi Daisy. I have always been interested in the paranormal, and I have had my fair share of paranormal experiences. I remember having conversations with my daughter about anything paranormal since she was little. One day, I decided to tell her a story that I had never shared before, as it still sent chills down my spine. My husband, daughter, and I lived in a nice house. It was fairly new, and we had lived there for a while. Since my daughter was still a baby at the time, I put her down for her naps fairly often. It was a normal day. I knew I would be loud downstairs since I was watching TV, so I made sure to shut the door. I ended up going downstairs and continuing the TV series that I had just started watching. I occasionally checked on my daughter, making sure she was sleeping well and that everything was fine. That's when I heard it. Voices. It sounded like someone was having a full-on conversation with my daughter. It sent chills down my spine. No one else was in the house since my husband was out working that day. I started creeping upstairs as quietly as possible, thinking someone had broken into my house. I still couldn't make out what the voice was saying, but every once in a while, I could hear my daughter making random sounds as if she were trying to talk back to whatever was in that room with her. I tiptoed to the door and quickly swung it open to try to catch whoever or whatever was in there. I let out a huge gasp when I looked over at the crib and saw that my daughter was fast asleep. No more voices. Nothing. She was fast asleep and I was so confused. I thought I was going crazy. I told my husband about it when he came home, but as usual, he never believed me since he doesn't think anything paranormal is real. Well, the next morning, I went out with my husband and we had my best friend babysit. Everything went well until we came back home to find my best friend sitting on the outside steps. She looked terrified, like she had just seen a ghost. I asked her what was wrong, and she told me something terrifying. She had heard voices coming from my daughter's room. I had never told her about the voices or anything. At that point, I knew I wasn't going crazy. My husband started to believe me more and more, but still thought that maybe it was something else. I didn't want my daughter to be in danger from whatever this thing was. So the next day, I went to a few friends who were very religious. They asked me about anything that might have caused this. And then I thought of something. I remembered that my grandma had just passed away, but I was still skeptical. I ended up leaving with a bracelet dipped in holy water and a Bible. I said prayers and let whatever was in the house know that it was not welcome there. The next time I put my daughter down for a nap, I was waiting for the voices, but nothing happened. I knew it had worked, and I felt so relieved. I still pray to make sure that nothing comes back. To this very day, I don't know what was in my daughter's room, and she has no memory of anything. This next story happened when I was little. I used to live in a very old house. The house was a perfect size for my family. I remember that my siblings and I were very young at the time, and my brother was always the prankster in the family. He would always try to play pranks on us. I also have a sister with whom I shared a room at the time. There was one night in particular when everyone in my family had gone to bed, and for some reason, I couldn't fall asleep. I looked over at my sister, and she was fast asleep. I looked again and saw that the door had swung open. I thought it was my brother trying to play a trick on me, so I told him to stop, and then the door closed. I remember thinking to myself, did he actually listen for once? It was a relief. Until I felt my bed press down as if someone was sitting there. I sat up quickly and started telling my brother to stop. It was so dark I couldn't see anything. I reached my hand out to grab him, and then I felt it. Long hair. I screamed as my hand ran through the long hair. I ran to the door and flickered on the light as fast as I could. No one was there. I saw the bed rise up as if someone had just stood up from it. It sent chills down my spine. I looked at my sister, who had just woken up from my screaming. I knew it wasn't my brother or sister since they both had short hair. I got my sister to go to my brother's room with me, and we saw him fast asleep in his bed. To this day, when I stay over at my parents' house, I still don't even look at that room. When I was 18, my mom passed away. It was very hard on the family, and I had not experienced grief or loss before, so I ended up falling into some bad habits. I dreamt about her in the first few months, where I would be having a completely different dream, and then it would shift, and she would be there, and I would hold her and tell her how I missed her. It was a comfort, and I truly believed she was coming to actually visit me. These dreams stalked for years, and if I did dream of her, it would be a normal dream where she was in the background. And eventually, I stopped having dreams with her in them altogether. At one point, I'm living alone in this small apartment, and all of a sudden, I started seeing these dark shadows on the top corners of my bedroom walls. It was a regular room, my bed in the middle, door to my left. As I'm laying there, I see something dark, kind of sliding down the wall. These shadows didn't have a form, honestly looked like black vapor. I would think to myself, oh, maybe it's coming from outside, maybe the glare from my phone, or the moon, etc. But at this point, I had been living here long enough to know that this was definitely different. At this time, I started having terrifying sleep paralysis. I would dream of those shadow vapor things coming down my wall and feeling something on top of me that I couldn't see. And all I could do was move my eyes and try to mouth El Padre Nuestro. Eventually, I would wake up shaking and go to the living room and watch something for the rest of the night. This went on for a few weeks. I would sleep with a cross. I would pray before bed, and it kept happening. I would go maybe 2 days with peace, and then it would be back. No activity anywhere else. One night, I was in the middle of one of these dreams, and I was terrified, trying to mouth a prayer, but I couldn't say it. Like, I couldn't remember the words to it. Then, all of a sudden, my door slams open, and it was my mom. She was standing there in her favorite mandil, apron, holding a broom. And Daisy, she went to work. She started smacking the wall next to her, screaming in Spanish, "Órale, hijos de su madre, se me salen de aquí, váyanse a la..." Translating roughly to "get out of here, you sons of..." She was smacking the walls with the broom and saying all of this. And I kid you not, I saw these vapor shadow things go towards the open door. I still couldn't move, just moving my eyes from her to the shadows and back. These things went out the door, and she gave me one last look and slammed the door shut. When the door slammed, I woke up. After not having seen her in my dreams for years and seeing her for that brief glimpse, I was bawling my eyes out, and I just kept thinking her over and over. When I tell you, I have not experienced those dreams since, either I have gotten better at protecting myself, or she really came back one last time to protect me. Hello Daisy, my name is Diego. My sister and I love watching your videos, so I decided to share one of the many stories that occurred in my old house. Hi Diego sister. I have always lived in a big neighborhood with a history of being haunted due to a lagoon nearby where many people have died. One day, a few weeks before Christmas, my mom, my sister, and I were on our way to a party, and my older brother decided to stay home alone. At the time, he was around 11 or 12 years old. We left the house around 4 p.m., and as we were leaving, we saw a lady crash into one of those electricity poles, causing all the lights to go out in our neighborhood. We called my brother, and he told us he wanted to stay home, saying it was not that big of a deal. While we were at the party, a few hours later, I received a call from my brother, and he sounded really scared. He had started hearing loud bangs coming from my parents' room. He got scared and decided to change and go to my grandma's house, which was a few blocks away. While he was changing, he said he saw a shadow out of the corner of his eye passing through our bedroom door. He started changing faster and was on his way out when he passed our living room. He swears he saw the shadow of a little girl wearing a black dress standing next to our Christmas tree. He panicked and ran to my grandma's house. Once he called us, we decided to go home. My dad went to my uncle's house to explain to him what my brother saw. My uncle is a guy who loves paranormal activity, and he lives about 2 houses down. When my dad was there, he met with my uncle and my uncle's neighbor, who was around 15 or 16 years old. My uncle explained to my dad that his neighbor was home alone and heard someone knock on his front door. When he peeked through the window to check who it was, he saw the same shadow of a little girl wearing a black dress. This is one of many stories I have. We have since moved houses, but we still live in the same neighborhood. I have a feeling that whatever was at my old house followed us, because we have had some experiences that we can't explain. Hola Daisy. I finally decided to share one of my many stories about the paranormal. This incident still haunts me, and I think about it from time to time. So, a little background. I'm from Virginia, and this paranormal incident happened when I lived with my mom in a townhouse along with my other 2 sisters, my brother, and my stepfather. This wasn't the first paranormal activity we had experienced, and unfortunately, it was not our last. My mom's house is infested with many spirits. One of a little boy with a ball, another of a lady with long hair and a white dress. Now, on with the story. My older sister had her friend Melissa over. It was a very common occurrence. My family and I had grown used to it to the point where she was considered family. It was nighttime, and as usual, I put on my AirPods and fell asleep. Mind you, I fell asleep with my AirPods in, so I couldn't hear any noise happening around me. The next morning, I woke up with an eerie feeling. The room felt dark, and not in the there was no light in the room kind of way. I paid no mind to it. It was around 5:30 a.m., and I had to get to work at 6:30. I noticed my sister's friend was sleeping next to my sister, so I decided to pick out my clothes for the day and change in my mom's bathroom so I wouldn't make any noise and wake them up. Once I was done, I headed back to my room. I continued to stay as quiet as possible and headed downstairs to get some pan con café. I left for work, but before doing so, I made sure the door was locked. This is important to the story because we have a keypad lock for our main door to the house, and the only way to open it is by entering the 4-digit code. In order to lock it, you have to motion your hand across the keypad until you hear the command, "Door locked," from the keypad, which I did hear. As I came back home from work, I saw my mom sitting on the couch watching her novelas. I went to sit with her and asked her how her day was. She said it was good, and then asked me, "Mija, ¿a qué hora te fuiste a trabajar?" I told her I left around 6, and asked her why. She told me that when she came downstairs around 7 to prepare the kids' lunch for school, she felt a cold breeze coming from upstairs and heard rustling in the kitchen. So when she went down to see what was going on, midway down the stairs, she saw the front door to the apartment wide open. She told me she began to panic, thinking it was an intruder. My mom rushed down to see if there had been anyone, but found no one. She thought she was getting robbed, so she checked everything to see what was missing, but everything was still there. She had no idea what had just happened, but began to pray as she felt a dark feeling surrounding her. So my mom asked me if I had locked the door, and I told her that I did, that I put it on everything that I know I did. But the story doesn't end there. I then waited for my sister to get home to tell her what happened, but apparently my mom beat me to it. I then just emphasized how weird the situation was and that I had a feeling in my chest that morning that something wasn't right. My sister agreed with me, saying that the situation was definitely weird and that her friend Melissa could have sworn as well that she locked the door before leaving. I froze. What? I asked in complete disbelief at what she had told me. She then repeated that it couldn't have been Melissa because she left at 1 a.m. My eyes widened at the mention once more. I asked her if she was lying to me. No, why would I lie about that? Me and her had gotten into an argument and I kicked her out, which was something typical between them, so I believed her. But then I asked, how could that be? I saw her sleeping next to you in the morning. I saw her figure in the sheets and the head and everything. I know what I saw. And no, I wasn't being a sleepyhead like my sister is saying I was, lol. I know what I saw. And it may have been a little dark, but I still had my flashlight. And I saw the person next to my sister clear as day. That moment still haunts me to this day. Yes, there have been many incidents before this one, but never something like that. I firmly believe that the spirit that laid beside my sister had something to do with the front door to the house being found open. So that was it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you to everyone that writes in their stories, taking out the time to share your story with all of us. We seriously appreciate it. If you have a spooky story that you like to share or another spooky story that you like to share, feel free to send it in at daisyspooks@gmail.com. The information will be in the description box just in case you want to send in yours. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys all enjoyed, and I hope to see you guys all in the next one. Bye. Not long after that night, I left Arkansas and returned to California. I've only told a few people about this experience, but no one has been able to explain what I saw. To this day, I still think about that night and it terrifies me. This is just one of my stories. I have had other experiences, and I also have gifts. For a while, they faded, but recently, they started coming back. Hello, Daisy. I would like to stay anonymous for now. My story takes place in Chihuahua, Mexico, back in 2015. I was 11 years old at that time. I live in the US, but my mom decided we should visit Mexico during my summer break to spend time with family since almost all of our relatives are from there. My family lives in one of the more run-down barrios, where it can be dangerous to walk alone because of the gangs and kidnappings that used to be common. Because of this, I was never alone in this story that I'm about to share. I was close to my cousin, who was around the same age as me, so we were always together. She moved around a lot, going from house to house, and to be honest, all of her houses creeped me out. But there was one in particular that still sends chills down my spine every time I walk past it. Whenever we visited Mexico, we always stayed at my grandma's house. My cousin's house was only a 5-minute walk from there. Like I mentioned before, my grandma's neighborhood was pretty run down. Most of the houses were old and worn out, but my cousin's house was different. Her house was beautiful. It was 2 stories, freshly painted white, and looked pristine compared to the others. It had a massive white see-through gate and 4 large windows. But despite its appearance, there was something about the house that felt off. At the time, Netflix was a big deal, and my cousin was the only one who had access to it. My sister and 2 of my older cousins would often go to her house just to watch movies. Well, one afternoon, my cousin and I were at my grandma's house when we got bored and decided to go watch a movie at her place. Since we knew my sister and cousins were already inside, my cousin didn't bother asking her mom for the house key. We walked over and knocked on the door. No one answered. We knocked again, and still nothing. After waiting a while, we decided to sit near a small food store across the street from her house. Since her windows were thin, we figured my sister and cousins would eventually hear us. My cousin started calling out my sister's name, yelling for her to open the door. We kept calling for about 5 minutes, when suddenly, someone peeked through the upstairs window. The curtain moved slightly, and I saw a girl with long dark hair wearing a long white dress. She looked almost exactly like my sister. My cousin shouted at her again to open the door. Instead of responding, the girl just pointed at us and smiled, but not a normal smile. It was mocking, almost as she was taunting us. At that point, we were mad. It was obvious they were messing with us. We assumed they were just playing around, ignoring us on purpose. My cousin ran back to my grandmother's house to complain to her mom about how my sister and cousin wouldn't let us in. My mom ended up calling my sister and scolding her for not opening the door. By the time we walked back, they finally opened the door for us. My cousin, still annoyed, asked why they didn't open the door when they clearly had seen us outside. That's when they told us something that made my heart drop. They swore they never left the room. For context, in the house, all the bedrooms and bathrooms were downstairs, while the kitchen and living room were upstairs. They explained that they had been watching a movie in my aunt's room the entire time and never heard us calling them. I started arguing with them, thinking they were lying. They always liked to mess with us since we were younger than them, but as I kept arguing, I noticed something. I looked at what they were wearing. None of them were wearing white. That's when I realized whoever we saw upstairs wasn't any of them. I still don't know exactly what I saw that day, but I truly believe it was a ghost. After that incident, my sister started telling me that every night around 1 a.m., she would hear small footsteps running up and down the stairs. It might not be the scariest story, but at that moment, it was the most terrifying experience of my life. So that was it for today's spooky stories. Thank you to everyone that shared their encounters. If you have a spooky story that you'd like to share with us, please send it in at daisyspooks@gmail.com. We would love to hear your guys' stories. But that was it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope to see you guys all in my next one. Bye! Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Daisy. As you guys saw by the title, I will be reading my subscribers' spooky stories. So grab your snacks, grab your cobija, and let's get straight into it. Hi Daisy. It all started back when I was in the university, with nothing to do but idle away hours of boredom. My best friend and I, who were both obsessed with spooky stories, Reddit threads, and YouTube channels dedicated to the paranormal, decided to take a leap into the unknown. Out of curiosity and maybe a little recklessness, we decided to try an Ouija board. We didn't dive in without preparation. We did our homework. How to stay safe, be respectful, and dispose of the board properly. The one thing we did know was that we didn't want any lingering spirits following us back to our homes. So, we made a plan. We would find a secluded spot, far from the safety of our rooms, and attempt to contact whatever might be out there. It was supposed to be just the two of us, but on the day we decided to go through with it, another friend of ours, a fellow enthusiast of the spooky and strange, joined in. The more the merrier, right? It also helped ease some of our nerves. We didn't think to consider, though, whether our friend was truly prepared. As we gathered in secret, our first stop was the university grounds, a location we thought would be safe from prying eyes, but the risk of getting caught and perhaps labeled as practicing black magic pushed us to my best friend's house instead, a bit more secluded and a lot safer. We started on the terrace, sitting around the board, but the planchette didn't move. We waited and waited. Nothing. It was dull, like something was missing. Disappointed, we headed back inside, deciding to try again in a more enclosed space. My friend's locked room. There was hesitation. You see, this wasn't just any room. My best friend had already felt strange, paranormal things in that very space, like strange noises at night, and the more terrifying experience where she saw the doorknob of her room being turned and pulled as if someone was trying to enter. She had